Hi.
Hi.
You will be moderating this business panel about how companies and how creatives can work hand in hand. What do you actually expect from the outcome of this panel discussion?
Okay, so what I expect is a lot of fun. And in this day and age of online-only events, I can actually be in two places at the same time. So right now, I'm also already in the room where I see Marino and Tomasz and John and Rasmus, and they all smile here on the screen while I'm talking to you to this other room, to the main stage. So what I am expecting is we're gonna have a couple of good stories from actually, three different sizes and types of companies. So one which is still smaller but growing, Interlightning, and then a bank which is also growing, but comparing to Philips, maybe not that size. So we have three different types of companies, three different sizes of companies debating on the same topic. So how do they cooperate with creatives and creatives industry? And we're going to have a lot of best practices, also a lot of what actually doesn't work, what they aspire to, and then we're going to wave with a magic wand, what they would wish for if they would have a magic wand.
Okay, thank you. I guess you raised the expectations now. It was a really cool intro. So I hope that also Magic Wand will help you with this. So Bernd and Matej, we will now leave you to your panels and to your participants. So all of you, Matej and Bernd and all others, please enjoy these two lively discussions and see you back in a little bit less than an hour and a half.
Okay, welcome everybody, dear ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the next panel in this afternoon. You could see in the intro who do we have here with us. I'm gonna still do a recap of our guests today, and then give each of them a couple of minutes for the intro, so about the organization they come from and their role in the topic of today. So the topic of today again is cooperation between the creative sector, so CCI, culture and creative industry, culture creative sector, and their own organizations in developing better services and products in their respective environment. So we have with us Marino Furlan, the general manager of Interlightning, and then we have Tomasz Piljevic from business marketing management in Philips, John Michael Denhoff, the CEO of Nova KBM, and then just to spice it up, Rasmus Schering from Creative Business Network will be in the role of keynote listener, meaning he will respond to whatever the other three guys will be telling on the topics. The way we're going to do it is, again, a short round of introduction, and then I have a couple of questions prepared that each of them will respond to, and then we're also going to open up to the audience. So whenever you feel like it to comment or ask a question to whomever on the panel, just type it in the chat box of the conference system, and then we'll pick it up and then expand on that. So let me go into the first round. Marino Furlan, I hope that we hear each other. You need to unmute yourself and then just do a brief intro about the company, yourself, and the topic of today.
Yes, could we listen each other?
We can hear you well. We can also see you.
Thanks. Me too.
So this is your cue to give an intro on the Interlightning and your role in the terms of cooperation with creatives. You need to unmute yourself.
Sorry, I was disconnected. Now you can listen me, huh?
We can, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So I'm Marino Furlan from company Intro Lighting. I'm the owner of, so the family is ownership, a complete group of companies. We are in the field of lighting, and we passed already 30 years of our activities. Company is very focused on design management, and we was also awarded 4 years ago in France with on worldwide level for design management, and we are very proud for that. This was normally connected with a lot of our activities in that time to increase the design, to increase the quality, to increase to follow the experience of the people, and circular economy. So the mainstream was in the end to increase the profits and to become a really successful international oriented company. Today we have 350 over employees in 3 factories, Slovenia, Croatia and Serbia, and we are present in 76 countries worldwide. So we are a big size company, but on the world level we are still a small company, and focus to remain innovative. And is our straight is not to become the multinational with thousands of employees, and not anymore flexible and innovative. So something between that 2 models. So maybe later I could explain more.
All right, sure. We'll expand on that. Thank you, Marino. Next up, Tomasz or Tomek, your role and obviously the role of Philips in today's topic, so cooperation with creatives.
Thank you, Matej. So my name is Tomasz Pilewicz. I'm business marketing manager at Philips. I'm responsible for launching new solutions and services, and it has a lot to do with remote care delivery. Recently also for patients with risk of COVID-19, and the solutions, maybe I will have opportunity to speak later on, were co-created with clinicians and other stakeholders in the healthcare ecosystem. In parallel to Philips, I work as assistant professor at Warsaw School of Economics. I focus on technology entrepreneurship, on entrepreneurial finance, teamwork, more and more on teamwork in remote environment and problem solving. What could be interesting for us today is that in 2019 and 2020, I led multidisciplinary research on technology startup ecosystems in Central and Eastern Europe. And this year, Slovenia was ranked in top 5 of these ecosystems, effectively supporting promising companies. Philips is a multinational company, and it employs over 80,000 people. In research and development practice, there are like 12,000 people. 2/3 of them focus on novel and promising solutions on information technology services, augmented intelligence, clinical decision-making support, and data science. There is a lot of history and legacy behind the company. It is over 130 years there. And the research legacy and Philips design legacy is also like over 100 years in practice. So I'm very happy to be here with you today, and I'm looking forward to vigorous discussion. Thank you, Matej. Thank you, colleagues.
Thank you, Tomasz. We move on to John Michael Denhoff, the CEO of Nova KBM, obviously very well known in the Slovenian market, but maybe a little bit of a background for those of us who are not from Slovenia. So John.
Good afternoon, everyone. Great to be here as well. For those of you who don't know Nova KBM, we are now tied for first place as the largest bank in Slovenia. We were prior to that the second largest, merging with the third largest, banka, which is a merger which is well underway and nearly completed, I would say, by end of this year. But what people maybe don't realize is we've actually been merging banks for quite some time over the 3 years I've been here. And if you look backward in history, we already a conglomeration of 7 merged banks. So I think consolidation and transformation is very much on our agenda. And I think that's what we'll speak about a little bit today. But I can tell you the transformation at Nova KBM has been nothing short of remarkable. We focused a lot on culture change, which is a key recipe for anything else you want to do. But obviously that drives financials, client centricity, also technological transformation, and ultimately the backbone for us, which is regulatory compliance and security aspects. So there's a lot of facets we could talk about today. And I think the topic today around merger of creatives with a classic bank is actually a good example of how you can use creative thinking to transform even the most slow of sectors or the most, let's say, conservative of sectors in a really short period of time. Thanks for your time.
All right, good. Sounds promising. Thank you, John. And next up is Rasmus, who's, as I said, going to be more in the role of keynote listener and then commentator, but then again, he's also pitching in also to the questions that we have prepared. So Rasmus, a little bit about yourself and the organization that you come from.
Yes, I'm a CEO and founder of the Creative Business Network that runs the Creative Business Cup, where we actually have startups from 80 countries in the world. And as you know, here at Creative Business Network, we're not talking about we are talking about what we can do for the creative industries, but even more what the creative industries can do for the rest of the economy. I'm sure that many of John's bank's clients are sticky in the sense it's difficult for people, even with logical, rational reasons, they should change banks because another bank would be cheaper or better or for them. But usually clients are sticky when it comes to banks. And maybe it needs some creatives, some designers, some storytellers to actually move people. And that's what the creatives can do. They can really go in and help the banks, the transportation sector, sustainability. They can really help nudge people in making different decisions that are actually better than decisions. You know, we're all predictably irrational, as you know, and this predictably irrationality can actually be moved and nudged thanks to the creatives. So I think there's a lot of examples. Just shortly, I used to be the president of the European Creative Industries Alliance from a period of time appointed by President Tajani or Vice President Tajani of the European Commission. And now I run this network where we have some partners in 80 countries that all try to help stimulate how the creatives can create solutions in mobility, in banking, in sustainability, in health, etc.
All right. Thanks, Rasmus. We're gonna move on to the first set of questions. So it's gonna be for all of you, and then you're gonna respond from your vantage point. And obviously, you wouldn't be called on a panel unless you have some sort of stuff to talk about and to brag, honestly. So you have stuff that you have done, you're proud of, and you want to share with our audience. So the first question, but maybe before we go to the first question, again, a plea to all of the audience. If you have comments and questions, and if you're in the Conviva and not following you just via YouTube, there's a text box on the bottom right. Just type it in, and we're gonna read it and take it to our guests, and then we're gonna answer your questions. So this is a screenshot from a previous one. It looks like that. And another one, since my role is to encourage the interactions and obviously a lot of questions and so on, my role is also to then limit it when it goes too fiery. So I have this thing here. It's called ELMO, and you know it from the Sesame Street. And actually ELMO also stands for enough, let's move on. So when I'm going to have a feeling that we are too much into a debate on a single topic, I'm just going to wave ELMO a little bit, and we're all going to know that we need to move on. So ELMO's here with us also. Now, as I said, the first set of questions. So your best practices and experiences in the topic of working with creatives, either inside or outside. And we're going to go just the same turn as we did before. We're going to start with Marino, and I know that he's going to speak a little bit about the Competence Center for Design Management and their experience there. So Marino, please.
Thank you, Matej. One of the most and best experiences we got in last several years was for sure the association we create together with 37 Slovenian companies with name Competence Center for Design Management. So in that period, we exchange a lot of experiences between companies. They were selected really companies with end consumer products, so not the spare parts of the car or something like that. So really the creative industry what we found very positive was also a lot of people who was involved in presenting the experiences also from worldwide experiences like Lego and similar. So this was helpful also for internal use in the company because we involved a lot of people from the company. So we made really shorter team building in one way, I could say, for several people in the company. So to understand what's the next step in the company to be done in that period. So this is 10 years ago and 6 years ago. We started 2 times. There's a venture with competence center and was really a very good result because already maybe 20 years when we started with design, to introduce design in the company, in our process, was very tough because people doesn't understand what mean that. So everybody was thinking just is necessary to be nice, but that's not the design management. Design management is much more than that. And our experience of this was really great. After we found also some of the presenters during the process of competence center is also one guy who is really helpful for us. And we started also to create internally in the company, in the group, a new team working on early innovation. So the main threat of that is to make much shorter process of developing new products. And this is already running. We are still working on because practically we are working on projects and we can offer to the market the product with all necessary tools to sell already in 6 months or maximum 12 months from beginning of idea when we have the prototype. So this was in the past minimum 2 years or maybe 2 years to get photo from the first projects to introduce our products. So today we are 3-4 times shorter and faster. And that's the main result we achieved. And also the logic of thinking in the company, because after that we came also to our strategy that's or our view, what's necessary to respect in the company. Working in any department is we are not selling any more light or luminaire. So we are selling light. So that means for human on the first, for architectural, so the space where the human are living, working, enjoying, or any other activities they have. And on the third place is light. On place 4 is our luminaire. So that means also the way how to do it light was very important to define. And we defined it in that way. So the light need to be only enough on the right place, on the right time. So all the rest is not that. We don't need, the customer don't need, human doesn't need, so don't do it. So that's the answer to marketing, R&D department, sales department, any other department in the company.
Okay, thank you, Marino, for this first answer to the question. And we can already see a pattern that I know that is going to be here. So working with creatives outside of the company does not necessarily mean just the creatives in the traditional sense, the freelancers and so on, but also in a sense of agencies, and we see a lot of this type of cooperation. So moving on, John already mentioned the transformation part, also coming because of the mergers and everything else, and also the 2020 COVID year was actually a big push for the digitalization, which was also the name of the game in the bank. So John, you have a couple of messages. So what were your best practices?
Sure. Well, thanks for this one. I mean, one of the stories I like to tell about transformation is actually the digital transformation within the bank, because digital is obviously a key driver, and it's something traditionally banks are not always that good at. So when I arrived 3 years ago, we had a mandate to really improve the bank financially in terms of client satisfaction, in terms of regulatory compliance, as I said earlier, but we didn't really have the channels set up to do that. And one of the other challenges was we were upgrading our core platform, which was a very big project. It was going to take about 2.5 years of our IT resource. So we had this dilemma: how do you really improve your digital front end without being a tech company and without having any mandates left? And the answer was, we came up with a very smart partnership with a design, development, and implementation company. In our case, it was Drugivid. They're a well-known tech provider who worked with us. And we gave them a pretty strong challenge. We said, look, you can't really touch the inner plumbing of the bank, but luckily we have most of the functionality we need. What they were supposed to focus on was really UI, UX, and just making things simpler, leaner, and easier to understand. We had a lot of bureaucracy, a lot of 20-click type of processes at the beginning. And they basically went in, and through this division of labor, we said, let the bank focus on the security and on the core platform change, and let the creative company come up with how do we make it simpler, better, easier for a client. And the simple rule was, if it's easier for a client to come online and get the information, they won't need to call, or they won't need to go to the branch, which was the custom. So we did, in the bank, we do about 2 technology releases per year. So that doesn't leave a lot of room. But through this approach, we were able to move towards a complete agile methodology where we were every month putting into production new changes, mainly user interface level. So we did over 100 changes. The most important ones, some of you as clients maybe saw, we did complete remote onboarding, which means you could become a digital client from home without having to go back into the branch. We also moved to SMS OTP, which meant you basically get your authentication code over SMS, which is something that was a barrier for clients because they didn't have tokens downloaded and they were expensive, about 30 euros. So for people who make infrequent digital transactions, that was a barrier. And as I said, a lot of simplicity changes like 2-click approach or even 1-click approach for information displays. The other secret of our success was we had a small influx of foreign talent. So we hired people from advanced digital markets like Turkey, like Romania, like Asia, where they really understand better what's the end state. So you get a couple of people on your team who really understand what the end state will look like. And this is much better than trying to teach hundreds of people what the end state might be, because they already know the end state, they've lived it. And so this combination of a good partner focused on the front end, good division of labor, and I think an influx of ideas was really how we changed our online platform. And just a few proof points. One was we used to be ranked toward the bottom of the online banks, but now we were ranked recently by Elaborat as the best online bank and the best mobile bank. So that happened, as I said, with remarkably few changes, but they were all done to the benefit of the customer. The other thing we saw was NPS, the Net Promoter Scores, went from -12 to +71, with 100 being perfect score. So it's pretty hard to do better than that, again, with relatively simple changes. So now when people ask us, are we really worried about some of these digital only banks like N26 or others? We say no, because we have better digital platform and we have people for when you want to have a mortgage conversation or investment conversation. You can also reach us because we've now got the biggest physical network, thanks to a large number of branches, as well as a strategic partnership with the post office. So we feel we can really now be everywhere. And as a result of that, we were able to more than double our digital active users. As I said, the satisfaction shot up. And interesting part of the story was it didn't actually cost a lot of money, this partnership. It was just really focusing people with an approach to fixing customer pain points, looking at where there's friction in the process. And really, it's all about simplicity. Same time, we also took 70% of our products off the shelf. That was by design because they were never making money, they didn't have scale, or they had flawed design. So we just focused on the best products that made most sense for clients, and we just digitized everything. So that's the quick story. Maybe one other little anecdote to add. We also have used our online platform to create a social engagement platform for our staff. So even though people now are working from home, we have about 1,000 people who are at home working, and they're a little bit lonely, sometimes even a little depressed. They can't get out for a drink or a restaurant meal. So we created a platform for our staff to compete. And I mentioned earlier, culture change is a bigger part of the transformation recipe than anything else. So you have to get your people thinking in step, thinking about what they can do. So usually we had every November a physical come together of all of our people. You can imagine with the Abanca merger, we really wanted the Nova KBM team to meet the Abanca team and get to know each other at all levels, but we couldn't meet now because of the pandemic. So on this online platform, which we set up with another creative, it was Poanta, coded by Goya, we created an online competition that went crazy. Our staff came out in hordes. We had over 400 active participants. We had now 44 different teams formed, and it was all about digital teaming. So we got people from Abanca, had to team up with people from Nova KBM, also our leasing company, Summit Leasing. You had to build cross-functional teams. You had to work with people you never met before. And then they had to do cool challenges like we collected money for charity. So we had over 42 entries with over 220 different projects come out, benefiting 400 organizations. And what was cool was this was not sponsorship paid for by the bank. It was all of our staff's own initiative as they're trying to come up with the coolest and the most innovative ideas. So I want to show you guys maybe at the end a small video about this. What made me feel really good as a CEO was not, that we donated money, which our bank does, but we created a platform where our staff could make a big difference. And now beyond charity, there's also a training around how you teach people new skills remotely. So we've seen the craziest stuff, people teaching people how to do the perfect basketball goal or the soccer goal, or how to dance in a branch, or how to do a certain TikTok move, and all kinds of stuff, just keeping people connected. And this is, for me, the biggest part of this secret sauce is getting your people to select into an inclusive, innovative mindset.
All right, thank you, John. That was a little bit of a spoiler alert because we're gonna go a little more into this topic at the end. We have a nice video to show exactly, what was the offshoot of this staff engagement platform, which is a really nice story. So what we see here is obviously cooperating with the creatives in terms of agencies on the outside, but then also tapping in the creative potential in the inside, which is what this last project that John was talking about is about. So thank you very much. Moving on. So Philips. The biggest organization on today's roster here. So your best practices that you have been part of, or that Philips has been part of, Tomek, if you can share it with us.
Thank you, Mate, and thanks, Marino, for sharing Lighting as a Service. Very inspiring, and John for this open innovation and involving employees. I think this is the key. And my reflection is that there is more and more co-creation approach, meaning that solutions and value propositions which are successful are involving its expected or end customers or users from the very beginning. So we can call it differently. Sometimes people call it a lean startup approach. Sometimes people call it as co-creation. But here you are looking for feedback at pretty early stage of what you develop. You improve what you develop based on that feedback, and you release in the end version of solution of product which is fitting these needs and includes this feedback. And one concrete example from this year is how Philips developed and launched in 3 weeks solution for remote screening of patients with risk of COVID-19. That was done in March and was co-created, co-developed with involvement of clinicians, in this case in Gouda Hospital in Netherlands. And it enables patients at risk to fill in clinical questionnaire, then to deliver something we call triage or prioritization of risk, and then to coordinate patient in the care delivery ecosystem. It proves that with involvement of your stakeholders, you can develop solutions fitting the need faster, and the value looked for is then satisfied. Lead users, and what is meant by this term, is involving people who do and improve existing solutions, not for the need of commercializing them, but because of the need of satisfying something unmet. In other words, there are many of inventors who could be called lead users, and there is bigger theory behind. It's investigated by Eric von Hippel from MIT for over 30 years. And lead users are, for example, in Philips ecosystem, hospitals and clinicians who improve solutions already released in the market by Philips, especially recently in the healthcare information technology, when they propose new algorithms for processing the data, for processing images of people vital signs, people scans from computed tomography, magnetic resonance. But there is more of lead users. I've seen, for example, lead users involved in design of new shoes. These are people who improve existing model. They add something, they cut something, they trim something, they receive better performance, and the manufacturer asks how they did that, right? And why they did that. And they did that in the end because of the need not to make cash spinner around this. It is also very promising and trending to use pyramiding, which is about finding people at the top of pyramid of the problem, which is not necessarily about people in your sector or in your branch. So pyramiding, for example, in medicine and in designing new solutions, for example, for surgeries, is for involving people from space industry, from military industry. But there are many examples when it proved to be efficient. One example is a lift manufacturer called Schindler, who had to reduce cost of the elevators installation. And they achieved that by involving people from Lego industry, mentioned already today, mining industry, and even show business industry. In the end, in the case elaborated by Harvard Business Review, the problem was solved by a person who was preparing scenes for David Copperfield in his magician shows. And yeah, pyramiding is used by Grundfos, famous Danish company, which is developing water pumps and water sewage management solutions. Also by Palfinger from Austria in transportation and many others. Last example, which I would like to share, broadcast innovation, is something mentioned today as well, but it has different faces, different dimensions. One example is community. It was mentioned by John. When you organize people around some challenge, you encourage them to solve the problem, you reward them, but research says people engage because of impact of solving something realistically challenging, about prestige in the community, also not necessarily money. And other type is supermarket of innovation, where company shares with challenges they have and involve other to provide solution. Philips is doing that through Spice platform. Before it was simply Innovate platform, when you can join teams and register with your solutions, get feedback and learn about next steps of working with Philips. There are also other great examples of this broadcast innovation. Like one of most famous one is Innocentive. This is a platform where many companies publish their challenges, and it exists for over 20 years as we speak right now. It solves multiple problems. Even governments use that platform to face and tackle with some natural disasters, natural crises. there are like 400,000 people registered who want to contribute, want to use their potential to solve problems which we are all facing. So to maybe conclude, what I experience and think is gaining on attraction is this involvement of resources out of your company, out of your, let's say, ivory tower, and making laboratory from the whole world and reaching to the resources there, not regarding if they are in your company and beyond.
All right. Thanks, Tobek. You already mentioned a couple of cases which are not necessarily only Philips's. So some of the best cases that we all observe and see around, and this is going to be the topic of the next round of questions. But before we go there, just something I reminded myself of when you were explaining some of the ideas. I know that certain challenge with the NASA spacewalking glove was actually solved by a guy who's in the other, daily business, actually doing the costumes for the Victoria's Secret shows. So, this is also something you wouldn't think of, but it actually also happens. So you then need to do the connections of, how this stuff needs to stick and so on.
And I also can I also recommend that you go on to, now we're speaking of NASA, to go to YouTube and Google Angry Birds and NASA, because there you will actually see, actually Angry Birds was, if you don't know, it was actually a learning platform for physics. And you can actually learn a lot about physics by playing Angry Bird, and also by watching the videos where you see lots of astronauts actually testing different physics experiments in the International Space Station. And they explain that the International Space Station weighs as much as 63 elephants and covers a whole American football field, etc. So I think that's really a good inspiration. I just want to ask a few questions here. John, if you had a good entrepreneur or intrapreneur, actually, how much time would it take for him to have a landing page made in your bank? We had the Banco Santander X. Santander X is their open innovation platform, and he was actually an entrepreneur coming into Banco Santander, and he was actually complaining that it took a month for him to make the landing page, or get Banco Santander to produce the landing page for this Banco Santander X innovation initiative. How is it being an entrepreneur, do you think, in your bank?
Well, you mentioned the turnaround time. We can do that overnight if we need to. And I have worked a long time in Asia where that's the norm. So we used to give our Asian, coders a deadline of 8 o'clock in the morning, and then we would go home and go to sleep and come in and you have a working prototype. So we don't always do that in Slovenia, because you're balancing what do you really need. And sometimes I would caution, against rushing too much. But when you're thinking agile, the way you do it is you try something and you see what sticks on the wall. Even if you make mistakes, it doesn't matter, because in digital online transactions, for example, you have so many people testing that you can very quickly learn from where, you can see where people are stuck or confused.
Exactly.
You have to, other things you have to get right with zero mistakes. So when it comes to, people's bank accounts or security, you can't afford to just pilot a use and look and feel type of stuff. So it really depends what you're solving for. But I think that sense of urgency is important, because as a foreigner maybe coming into a management position in Slovenia, you do see a lot of very talented people, but they often hold themselves back when they keep telling you why something's not possible. And then you say, well, come on, it's totally possible, and I've seen it before, so why don't you open your mind? And you sometimes have to point people towards the top of Mount Everest, but also show them how to get there. They don't always just go on their own.
No, exactly. And it's good. Both you are, leading a process. And I also know that the president of Banco Santander, she's also fully behind their initiative. And Thomas, you mentioned Lego. And I know that Lego architecture, for example, that wasn't proposed by someone from inside Lego. Lego has both with Lego Ghostbusters and also Lego architecture really pulled from outside. So, how did you see that inspiration from Lego coming in? You can just, elaborate a little bit on that.
Yeah, so Lego and Lego system, right, from the 1950s, and making bricks sticking to each other is something you can think as a metaphor when solving business problems, there is a methodology called Lego Serious Play, where they teach consultants how to facilitate sessions using Lego bricks and develop a strategy for a company or solve problems. But Lego in this engineering environment can help you with thinking how to fold, unfold, diverge, converge some things. And I was referring to Lego when I mentioned Schindler, a case where 50% of elevators installation were attributed to the manual work, not to manufacturing of it itself, because you needed to manipulate with construction of the building which you are using to install. So they ask people from Lego how to dismantle some elements. Then they ask people from transportation industry, from mining industry, from show business industry. But the solution here in that particular case, well elaborated by Harvard Business Review, and by the way, the author was Marion Poets, professor from Copenhagen Business School, is that they use mining software, because in mining you face with similar problem. You need to install something deep down in the ground, move it left, move it right, and do it in a way you are not destroying the whole construction. So the point thing here is that when we use Lego, or where we use play, where we use serious play, we can in fact become creative and more open, right? When we face to solve something challenging and not obvious at first glance.
Excellent. Thanks. Mate, do you want to move on, or do you want to take some questions from the audience?
Yeah. What I just did, I just copy pasted the questions which are in the platform, because I'm not sure that you guys are in the Conviva platform. So I just copy pasted them in the slides. So you have them now on, not necessarily very good resolution. I hope you will be able to also see them. Otherwise, I'm also going to read. So we have two really nice ladies asking us questions. So Christy and Jasna. Christy started first for Marino. So how does Interlighting measure the customer success, and how do they make sure they're progressing toward the vision? Also, who's responsible for achieving those metrics? I would guess Marino, but then again, you will have to answer. Marino?
So everybody in the company is responsible to make the customer satisfied. So in 30 years, we never left any customer anywhere in the world with a problem. So everybody is doing mistakes, but we never left anybody. And this is not very usual in the industry. We are really known about that. So in the last 20 years, and especially last 10 years, we are known also for innovation in design also, and in the lighting experiences. What I mentioned before, our philosophy is to make the lighting solution with the light where is necessary, when is necessary, and just enough. So in this field, we are covering all things is important today. Saving energy, for sure we do the best in this way, not with the digital, electronic, or anyway. Normally, also that is included in the lighting. But how to measure? So the most difficult point is how to motivate people internally, and how to reorganize what was mentioned before from Nova KBM. So this is a very tough job. And it's nice to get a lot of motivation. So the measurement, there are several ways of measurement of the happiness of the customer. But the best measurement is more orders. And when you see more orders, that you are sure that you are doing in the right way. And normally measuring also what is happening with them. Normally we measure by internet, by website, by 3D BIM, because our products are 3D designed and used. We was last year the most downloaded company in lighting by 3D BIM. So that means all data which you can measure. And this is also the result. Anyway, today is the crisis of COVID and pandemic. We are still running well. Maybe much better out of Europe and less better in Europe, because the influence in Europe is really, I don't know what to say, but for sure not in the right way organized.
All right, a little bit criticism there, which is always good. Yasna had a question. She got mesmerized about the word, which also I did when we were doing the presentation, the pyramiding, if that's the spelling and the pronunciation. So a question for you, Tomek. So if you can maybe expand a little bit on that, and maybe a little resources about the pyramiding. Is this like your thing, Philip's thing? Is this something bigger?
No, it's more general.
Okay.
It's more general, but the term is exactly to the point what it is about. It's about involving people at the top of pyramid of the problem, even if they don't represent your sector or branch. And you do it well when you find an expert and ask them for advice, and also ask them to recommend person who this expert thinks could be better in solving the same problem. And you may think that they will not do that because they think they best. But the thing is that people very often engage in problem solving because of passion and realistic impact they want to do on changing people's lives. And they very often recommend someone else, someone better. So this is basing, for example, how the anti-blocking systems were invented, right? This is problem when you break your car, therefore you have the system there, but motorization and car industry was not the first one which implemented the system. You need to think about problems on their progressiveness scale. You need to ask where this problem is even bigger, where I can find experts in the distant market facing similar problem. And this problem was in aircraft industry. Therefore, you had ABS systems first installed in aircrafts, then in cars, and then in motorcycles. And you can use pyramiding also for your neurofitness and ask yourself whom you would involve to invent the next generation of light and stable running shoes. Then you need to ask yourself question, where is similar problem, right? The typical orientation is to involve and hire raw materials engineers, right? But pyramiding in that case is to involve people maybe from gas inventing industry, where high pressures need stability and need performance. Maybe also people from space industry, right? Facing the same problem, not necessarily here with shoes, but with stability and with performance. So I mentioned that there is a series of articles, more professional than scholar ones, and the key opinion leaders writing these articles in scholar field are Nicolas Franke from Vienna University of Economics and Business, and Marion Poets from Copenhagen Business School. Both are professors. They publish in scholar papers, but there are some excerpts in Harvard Business Review. If you will need, you can contact me, and I will for sure provide you the references if that is of help, of course.
All right,
thanks, Jasna Clemens, for asking.
Yeah. She already said she got it, and there are some other links and so on in the chat, in the system. Perfect. It reminds me a little bit also on the day 2 part of the 5-day design sprint. Those of you who maybe know it, it's the lightning demos are actually very similar to this. So you go out to different industries and looking at how they solve the problem that you're about to tackle in their own perspective industries. So we'll take one more question, and then we'll move to our prepared questions, then maybe come back. So another one from Christy for John. It's on the topic, obviously, on finding and attracting digital talent, which is, as we know, an issue. So how do you go about it? How do you see the landscape?
Well, I agree with the innuendo that it's not so easy to find and keep the best digital talents, because not just banking, but every sector is digitizing. So you're not just competing with your classical competitors. You're competing with every high-tech sector, many of which are even regional or global. So, if you think from our perspective, we were actually a smaller bank. Originally, when I came, we were a regional bank, pretty much Maribor focused. So we had a hard time hiring and keeping people in Maribor. And, if you look at the legacy of the bank, we actually had a lot of antiquated systems that were run on old code. So we needed not only the best and the brightest new talents, but we needed to keep people who understood some of that historic code to keep updating the infrastructure as long as you needed it. So I think part of the solution was we just modernized the whole core, and that meant a lot of the legacy systems and the periphery around it, you just don't need to keep anymore, so you're running multiple versions of every system. You want one core that does what it should. Regarding the people side, we invested a lot in our digital teams. So first we tried to recruit the best. Wasn't always easy. and we probably don't always pay the best, but we try to motivate by being a more flexible employer. We don't care where people work. Even during COVID, I think we proved to our staff, you can work really from anywhere. So now we're able to recruit people, not just from Maribor, but also Ljubljana, Gorica, Zagreb. It doesn't really matter as long as people are attuned to working the way we work. So they have to work as team players. They have to be able to connect to get the job done right. And, you know, it's not just coding. You can find some really talented peer coders, but I think the question points also towards people who understand the client need. What are you really solving for, and applying some common sense to those math equations, right? But we did a lot. And as I said at the beginning with that story I told, a lot of it was about outsourcing to best-in-class companies. So we don't aspire to be the best technology house. Otherwise, I would be marketing coding services around to other companies. But this is a good place where banking needs fintechs. So we look for the best on hire, and we've had pretty good experience with that. But even those people, they know the bank well. They're working full-time on our account. So they're like part of the family, and we invite them to our parties. We invite them to our victory celebrations, and they're really connected really throughout the bank. They're just part of an outsourced team is all.
Good, thanks, John. And a perfect segue to our next round of questions. So looking out there for the best cases, best experience where other people are doing their best things, and then taking it in. So the next round of questions for all of you. So best practice and cases you've seen, you aspire to, you get inspiration from. So another round, first, Marino, I know you selected the two guys that we know so well that we can just look at the profiles and we know who they are, yeah? So Elon and Steve. And then also you're going to comment on the whole transition to LED, which happened way more faster than even you thought. So Marino.
Thank you for a speech. So today, if we look the world, how it's going, we see that today we have a huge opportunity of innovation. So we can change everything, because generally everything is very old, very traditional, and the new technologies, new way of thinking is opening miracles to build. For sure, the two big names in the past years and still today are Steve Jobs and Elon Musk, for my opinion. But normally, if we look the field of digitalization, what we prepared our company already 1.5 years ago. So when Corona was coming, we was prepared the day after to move everything home. And this was because our informatics guy are looking always in the future. So when we look the digitalization, for sure, is not just Steve Jobs the most important. It's also Bill Gates and the Microsoft company, not just Apple. And because they changed the way of doing from the past. If you look the transport or logistics, so Elon Musk is really doing miracles, but still it's just battery in the car. And maybe it's not any more car, it's a computer, and then around is the car. So this is the changing philosophy of today. And I think what John told in NKBM or Thomas in Philips, so this is happening also in Intra. So looking just a few years ago, we was thinking that changing of LED technology from the traditional luminaires will change in 5 to 7 years. But did you know in how many it happened? Just in 2 years. So in 2 years, we was obliged to change complete program. And that was the real success of the company, coming till today with a much more, how to say in English, so overthinking approach. Energy for sure is today a big challenge. Energy, we have the factory, old factory, we moved already in the new factory. So we got 43% of energy done by solar panels. So today we are planning to go to close to 100. Normally just on one location, where is it headquarters. But that's our oblige in the future, how to make environmentally circular economy. So how to reduce the smoke, the problems, because for sure also Corona is influenced by that. And we speak a lot about that, but we don't do much on that. So coming back to our strengths. So we are always thinking why we do something new, why? In any field, why? So if we don't know why, don't do it. Don't do it because we don't need. And respecting always the human. So to give them the comfort. So to saving time to them. So integrating in luminaires also the voice, the smell. So that's the future in our field. And normally everything is focused to make life of the human easier, nicer, and comfortable. But in the end, also safe. And this is happening also in lighting, because lighting is the base, is always in the position to be added a lot of things in the products.
All right, thank you, Marino. Before we move on to John, and I know what he's going to focus on, just a message to the backstage team. When you show the 5 of us, the title on top is not the right one. It says preparing fertile grants and some policies, which is not what we're talking about. So if you are able to change this as we are speaking, being agile and the stuff that we're talking about, that would be great. Otherwise, just to let you know, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about other things. Now going back to the question. So John, and I'm going to provoke you a little bit, and because I know exactly what you're talking about here. I did open both Revolut and N26 just because I could in the middle of the night, while all the banks in Slovenia had the lights off and they couldn't do it. So. But I know that you're drawing inspiration, or you were drawing inspiration from this, and then obviously integrating a lot of this stuff into what Nova KBM is doing now.
Yeah, so you're speaking as a client would see it, which is the reality perception that's there. I think one thing you have to keep in mind is, if you look around all the Slovene mainstream banks, we do have some requirements that we're supposed to know our customers. So we, especially at NKBM, took an even stricter approach on which clients we want to work with, because we were trying to distance ourselves from some of the anti-money laundering scandals of the past. So we really had to say, we're only going to work with clients who we know, who we document, and we are comfortable and proud to work with them as they are with us. So we don't want to work with criminals or people who are evading taxes and that kind of thing. And that's why we had to close many accounts at the beginning of this transformation that I talked about. So if you say, okay, that's your problematic, you need to know who you're banking with, even though it's digital, how do you open fully remote an account for somebody? And this is something we also took inspiration from, not necessarily in Slovenia because nobody's doing it yet here, but if you look around Europe, especially at Turkey or UK, there are some good examples of complete onboarding, including to the standards we're talking about. So this is something we are well advanced on. We're trying to copycat the best practices from overseas shamelessly wherever we find them, so that we can actually improve our bank and transform faster. So what it means for us is we are working on video identification, which I think something to watch, not just in banking, but in a lot of sectors, anywhere where you need to know your client to make a transaction, to make a payment, to open an account, to maybe make a FX trade, to do all kinds of things, even engage your clients with remote networking events. You want to know who you're talking to. So we are going to be using video identification with AI technology, because it has to be smart and targeted. And I think this will really transform the way we get our clients. We were talking about this earlier. Somebody said it's painful to change banks, right? Actually, the numbers show only about 3% of clients in a year in Slovenia change the bank. So your pool is so small, you have to get it right the first time. So when you enter that consideration set, means you're probably one of the 3 banks customers will go to, because they're not going to look at 20. First you got to be in that space as somebody that would be considered as a a fair partner for them. And obviously it's like a marriage, you know, you don't go with the bank you don't trust, you don't go with the bank that doesn't have the right platform. So we need to not just authenticate clients, but also serve them quickly. And this means we're working on, really it's a workflow change, the way we call it in internal language, but it's a client experience really, where, you know, let's say you want to change the bank. So you find us, we make it easy to authenticate you. Then we need your signature. So that should be also remote, fully digital. Then you need to submit documents in a safe environment. Again, should be easy. It should be as easy as sending photos on your WhatsApp, not, you know, downloading, uploading, turning stuff upside down, formatting. You know, this is the reality that we're trying to change. So I think this is something we don't have yet. We're working towards, but I think you will see some very interesting pilots before end of this year at Nova KBM around this fully remote account opening. And what's interesting is once you can do it for new clients, for new products, you can also do it for a lot of the servicing transactions. You know, a lot of clients, they go to the branch for mundane stuff you could just check online, but sometimes you go to the branch because you have to. I go maybe twice a year for my own business, and I don't really like to do it if I don't need to do it. So if you can make some of those servicing transactions also fully remote, then you start to create a convenience factor that clients like and they will appreciate. So that's one of the things I was inspired about from overseas.
But John,
Right.
can I just ask John a question?
Sure, Rasmus. Yeah.
Don't you think that some people also would still like to actually go to the bank and not necessarily do any banking business, but, you know, we talk a lot about financial illiteracy. And I know that, for example, ING Bank in the US, you could not do any banking at their branches. But you could go there, get a coffee, and speak to some people about why you should.
Oh, and this is what I was saying earlier: is a lot of the banks trying to compete with us or the NLBs or the SKBs of the world. They want to be digital only because it's very cost efficient. But there's always that moment of truth when something goes wrong that's not catered for in the digital menu. So you want to talk to a person, not just to solve a problem, but maybe to talk about having children, how do you save for a college education, changing jobs, buying a house. And this is why I said, for us, when we talk about trying to be the best bank in Slovenia, we don't want to be the best digital bank. We need to be the best digital bank with people who are client focused and ready to serve you. And this is where our physical footprint will always be a very important part of our service model. So the digital isn't really to replace the branches, it's to enhance it. And what's interesting, maybe you don't know this, people who use digital actively, they're also active users of the phone center and of branches. People who use you, they use you on all channels, depending on what they want, when they want it. So it's not about being mono-channel, you need to be multi-channel.
We had a case with the Danish bank, Jyske Bank, which is the third biggest Danish bank. It started making its branches into cafes. And there was actually some discussions whether they should have a license to start opening. They were competing with the regular cafes because people would come in and read magazines and take books down from the shelves, and then also speak with some of the employees about exactly what you talk about, some really personal issues like when should I, you know, when you're 28, do you think about the pension or getting unemployed, or how much money should I put aside, and what is really negative. A negative interest. How can you avoid that negative interest in a savings?
I'll tell you the clients who come in as well. And in fact, I spent some of my time earlier in my career also in branches selling products and advising clients. And there was a little old lady who used to bring us apple pie. I think because she liked us and because she was a little lonely. So you can't neglect that human element where people want contact, especially, you know, in our business when you're making financial decisions. You want to look somebody in the eye and you want to shake somebody's hand. And that's a contract that we take seriously. And that's why we were asking about how do you measure success in some of these sectors. I think the ultimate scorecard is your net promoter score. How many people recommend you as a bank or as any company to their family and friends? And if you don't get them recommending you, promoting you, you're probably not there yet.
Exactly. And you know, isn't it also so in Slovenia, like it is in Denmark, that people are rather sticky with their banks? That it is really difficult to get people to change banks, even if there are all kinds of good reasons for it.
Yeah, that's true. But if you look at the data, we don't just track our own client satisfaction scores. we track that of our competitors. So we know the playing field is relatively low in the sense that you just have to be better than the next competitor, right? So one of the things we've been doing is offering clients to say, why don't you try us for free for a limited period, because we're confident once people come into the bank and use the services, digital, physical, different products, they start to like them. But you have to get them willing to try. A good question is you ask them, are they satisfied with their current bank? And most people in Slovenia will tell you not.
Good. Then back to you, Matej. I suppose it's Thomas.
Sure. Maybe just shortly, I'm going to play a devil's advocate here. Let's imagine that banks go fully into the free coffee business, and then we have, a couple of hundreds of square meters of prime real estate downtown, just serving coffee for free. Then I would step in and say like, who's paying for all this? Maybe my fees to the bank is paying for all this. And then I'll go like, could you be a little more productive without just serving coffee? But that's half jokingly, but there might be people looking at
you might not know, but come to NKBM and we do serve our clients coffee, especially our premium segment. We serve them even a good whiskey or a cognac if they demand, but the customer is always right. So if clients want that, we have coffee machines in the back. Come by and I'll have a coffee with you in the bank. But we do it all the time. Sorry, I was going to just say, it's only a shame though, banks aren't allowed to sell coffee. Otherwise we would monetize the fact that we're often in prime real estate. Like I'm just near the Street Arriva branch. It'd be a great place to serve coffees on the corner or ice cream on a hot day, but banks aren't allowed. You can only sell by license financial services product, but we can give it away for free.
And if you're successful like John, you can actually have the clients bring in the cake with the coffee. If you're really good, the clients will say, here, I have some apple pie, let's have a coffee.
Exactly. That's the best thank you you'll ever get is homemade apple pie.
And there's also one thing that you made me think of. I had a dentist that I stayed with for quite some years because you could always get a cognac or brandy or something before you went into the chair. So while you were in the waiting room, you could get a little drink, and that was actually part of the whole experience of going to the dentist.
But Rasmus, that was socialist era anesthesia or what?
No. This was in Denmark. It still happens, and this is really good because you just relax a bit and you have a cognac and then you go in and
then he starts the drilling, right?
Yeah. So, hey, and it will make me sticky with my dentist. Anyway, sorry.
No problem. I actually really hope that lots of this stuff that we're talking about will stick with, I hope, many service providers that are listening to our panel here. And then a lot of this stuff will start to appear as we go around with doing our business in the town. Okay, so we are in the last, let's say, 15 minutes or so stretch of this panel. So probably we will not be able to cover everything. But having said that, so Tomek, maybe just briefly on the three, because I know that all three of them that you have, so the Wright Brothers Institute, Institute for the Future, and Experience Engineering are rich topics. So maybe just briefly go over them that we have some knowledge out of it.
Yeah, and it has a lot to do with what was mentioned by Marino, like marketing's experience, multi-sensorism of solutions, and what was mentioned by John, which is about transfer of learning from other industries, how you could adapt this. You discussed digital onboarding. I remember Open Innovation Challenge of Raiffeisen from 10 years ago, how to operate with no physical facilities. So even though Philips is pretty global and complex company, it needs to learn continuously to deliver on its mission, which is to improve life and quality of lives of 3 billion people by 2025, and we are audited every year from that goal. And these inspirations here are listed because there is still a lot to do in terms of how we operate, how we learn in innovation practice. Wright Brothers Institute from the United States leads sessions which are called divergent convergent sessions, where they invite people from other industries to work on your problem. And it may sound as not breakthrough, but the people they invite are not briefed from whom they will be working for. It means that they come with very fresh ideas. It resembles me Gordon method from 1960s, where you don't solve a problem, but symptoms of the problem, and you receive fresh and unspoiled ideas. Second example, Institute for the Future is issuing very regularly so-called technology roadmaps, which can stimulate to discuss the future with you and your employees. They also present some things called artificials from the future to trigger some windows and doors in your thinking. And this has a lot to do with corporate foresight. The question, what will matter in 20 years from now? And then the question, what we need to do today to be there in these 20 years. So Institute for the Future helps in corporate foresight, and there are many companies using and prospering on that. You can find so-called pictures of the future by Siemens Technology in open domain and see how they envisaged the future 20 years ago. And now you may think this is where we live right now. They issue pictures of the future every year, and Bosch, Robert Bosch company, issues that even more frequent, because every half year. The third and last example, Experience Engineering.inc, is about involving psychologists, anthropologists, philosophers into design of your solutions. And my favorite example is Avis company. This is car rental company competing with Hertz, where they totally redefined the experience because they involve people tracking customers and observing where they are stressed. And it led to a new value proposition, like you don't need to clean up or tank your car when you are leaving it at the airport. In the airport, when you are picking it up, there are cabins so you can change your clothes from formal to casual to feel comfortable in the car. There are screens in the places where you pick up the car to show that you will not be late for the flight, and many, many more. So these are inspirations. If I am to encapsulate them in one sentence, it's about divergent, convergent, analytical, and synthetic thinking, pulling in different resources, selecting the best ideas, prototyping, and moving up fast, right? So that
all right. Thank you, Tomek. Now another slide on the Q&A, but then again, I think we've had enough of them, and we have some topics for only us to discuss. So if there are any pressing questions, of course, put them in, but we're good so far. So the challenges and obstacles, going a little more on the dark side from the bright side, pun intended for Marino here. So before we go into the magic stick, so the challenges and obstacles that you see in the topic that we're discussing. Yeah. First,
we have 10 minutes for this, right?
Yeah. We go just briefly on that. So we don't want to spend too much time on the dark side. So just briefly, we start with Marino, right? Motivation for innovation and selection. Which ones? Briefly.
So I go very fast, so we have no time. So the biggest challenges for the future is to create teamwork, to create innovative thinking, to select the right innovative ideas, not doing what the company doesn't need and what the customer doesn't need. And to do all that, we are creating a Light Experience Center. In this moment, we are building the spaces. Because if you want to explain something, and this practically the teaching center and the wow center, is you need to explain what's bad. Otherwise, you don't understand what's good. And going on creative team is the beginning is internally. So we passed already that. With external specialists is the step 2 we are doing now. But the challenge and the future is for sure to create the community with architects and lighting designer. We are our influencer. And in the end, also to create the community with our end customer.
All right, thank you, Marino. And John has, let's say, a little bit of connection to this. So the mindset, again, for the motivation, it's either enabler or blocker, and the can-do attitude, and then hiring for potential, not necessarily for skills. So John.
Well, for me, the mindset's important because it's either a blocker or an opportunity, depending on what you find. But I think, when I look at Slovenia, I see 2 pools of groups. You see blockers, they don't want to do anything. They want to go home at 3 o'clock, and they're telling you everything is impossible. And I think a lot of those kind of people, they are common in our market. But you also see a lot of people with the real winning can-do attitude, where you give them a challenge and they don't just test it to fail, they find a way and they keep piloting until it works. So I think this is important. And I was going to use the old analogy, you know, and I've been in banking 30 years. We used to always say, hire somebody with the direct relevant experience. But I think that adage doesn't really work anymore. You need to hire people for potential, because a lot of the stuff we're doing, it's anyway new frontiers. So you need people who learn faster and they're just more adaptable than necessarily having been there before. So I think hire for potential, and that's what we look for.
All right, thanks, John. Tomek, you have again a nice set of ones. So briefly go over it.
Thanks. So yeah, my reflection is that on macro scale, you need to inspire people to be brave, right, and to contribute to the general growth and development. And in some countries, you do that through special agencies like DEA in Denmark, Nesta in UK, or Julius Raab Foundation in Austria. They all prepared something called Open Innovation Strategy for Country. And this is about mass change in country mindset and moving people forward to be contributive, like everyone, every man. On a mesoscale and microscale, like in company, I think the biggest challenge, but also opportunity, is to create proper osmosis or environment, enabling people to feel valued and contribute. And you do that using classic change management methods. And this says that you need to involve hearts, you need to involve minds, but also show people that they don't start from the scratch. They are already like a halfway there. And it's building up confidence. So you manage group dynamics by inspiring people how to prepare to a session. If you facilitate problem solving and idea generation sessions, you do that of using so-called fluid play. I lead sessions where we use posters, magazines, and we use Tesa tape, scissors, and we create picture of the future. This is how we design how to celebrate 100th anniversary of Philips branch in Poland next year. We involved broad group of employees to draw the picture, then to elaborate further. We ask ourselves questions like they do in design thinking questions, like how this event could be prepared by people who are producers of streaming platform movies, how this could be done by YouTubers and podcasters, how this could be done by people responsible for mass events which are successful in global environment. So we ask this question to stimulate, divergent, convergent thinking. Then, of course, what is important is getting back to people involved. You need to make a point that their involvement was for something. If you don't do that, they lose stamina and further engagement, right? So it's not about financial retributions, but it's also about, providing very soft incentives, including exposition, internal company, including feedback, including maybe some coaching, mentoring opportunities, which don't cost much, but can lead you far. And so this is partially also an art, right? So I don't have like a one recipe. This is learning journey where you need to learn from others. Like John said, they observe other industries. This is what Elon Musk is doing. They call it transferred learning, but the important thing is they transfer not what is working, but they start from asking what has not been working and how we could make sure that it will work in our case. So this is reminding me reverse the brainstorming method a little bit, but it proves it's working in Tesla's case at least. So yeah, I'm very happy that I learned so much today from you, because this is, as I said, continued learning in terms of what we could do better.
All right, thank you, Tomek. Moving into the last stretch. As I promised, I have this actually real Harry Potter magic wand also on this one. And you know that you're going to be given this question. If you could, change one thing, but I know that some of you actually, will have several wishes to be granted. And in the same token, we can actually take the question from Christy again, which was, what do you think that the government should do to support more the companies that want to innovate in the digital services? So that might be also your wish if you want to. So the last set of questions, if you had a wish or three, what would you change to have, the today's topic be even better in the future? So Marino, first, I think there's something that you want to share with us. You need to unmute yourself. We don't hear you.
Sorry. I would change nothing for the past, because if we go to change the past, we lose time. So we need to focus ourselves on the future and doing innovative. So that's all can I tell.
Thank you, Marino. I mean, I knew what you're going to say, and I'm using this question a lot on panels, and never have I gotten this answer. So, but it
so the
holds
past,
its weight, yeah?
The past would be only the experience, good and bad. But if we don't have bad, we don't understand what is good. So that's very simple.
Dark and light metaphor all over again. Thank you, Marino. Next up, John, this is what
that's me. I mean, I would just wish for, if I had a magic wand, to see more successful people mentoring younger people with the kind of potential we spoke about. I think you can really jumpstart a lot of businesses or companies if you just take some of these people who are eager to learn and you show them some of the tricks and patterns and learnings of the trade. So that's what I wish for, something simple and doable.
Yeah, it is. It is. Thank you, John. And Tomek.
Yes, so I think we need to proliferate or to promote what we discussed today, because there is a lot which states and governmental agencies can do in terms of facilitation. We mentioned today NASA Innovation Pavilion. I brought you Innocentive, but in fact, there are more and more open innovation platforms also at country levels. You have Topcoder, Galaxy Zoo, Ubiome helping in life sciences problems. Also Foldit, which is for puzzles unsolved from mathematical point of view. There is open innovation in science, which inspires people to ask questions which has not been solved by scientists so far, led in Germany by Ludwig Boltzmann Gesellschaft. So this is one thing. Another, involving people from the top of the pyramid by asking whom next they would recommend in terms of neurofitness and problem-solving skills. They think it's worth to involve to solve particular problem. And then fluid play, but by this I mean co-creation methods where you use cardboards, when you use scissors, glues, and tesa tape, when you also use Lego bricks, when you know how to facilitate Lego serious play. And the first rule is about environment and osmosis for people to feel safe. So there is a lot to do. Everyone of us can do a lot in terms of increasing awareness, right? There are many open online courses about creativity, like at coursera.org. You can find Cracking Creativity Code by Technion Institute of Technology, very nice one by Professor Shlomo Maital. There are very simple books by Todd Henry, like The Accidental Creative, right, or Stevenson, 7 Patterns of Innovation. So every one of us can do something to contribute, right? So in the end, it's about us making small, simple steps, right, which can result in a snowball effect.
All right, thank you, Tomek. So just before we end up, we're gonna have time for the Virtual Olympics video that we mentioned. So John, we're gonna do this at the very end and then say goodbye. But first, Erasmus, maybe do you have a wish that you want and a sort of a recap?
It's difficult to recap this 1.5 hours in 10, 15 seconds. It sounds like self-promotion, but I can actually recommend that you go to thisis.cbnet.com, what I've written right under my name, because here you can actually find about 500 experts and startups and investors in this field on cross-sector innovation. I've been really inspired by hearing what you guys told me. We do actually have in the past also run an e-governance, where actually creatives had to help government entities in innovating and using open innovation sources. We've helped Arla, the 5th biggest dairy producer in the world, to also work with canned anchovies, etc., manufacturers, on how you can actually storytell a different story around milk and yogurt. So anyway, just thanks a lot, all of you, for being part of this. I'm looking forward to see the last part of this and to joining you again. Actually, I can also make a small advertisement for a Play and Learn. We have the Lego Foundation. There will be in about an hour. There will be a Lego Foundation and a Play and Learn session here. We run the Creative Business Network as part of the Creative Forum of Slovenia. So dial in and hear from Bo Stjerne Thompson from the Lego Foundation and from me and others.
Yeah, thank you. I wanted to actually mention this. So yeah, there is actually a workshop-like session also today in this program. So please do join after we finish. So now the Virtual Olympics. So that's a code name of what you did as part of this. Maybe before we run the video, stop backstage, please stop. So John needs to tell you a couple of words about this. What we're going to see.
Go ahead and
John,
play it, and I can talk over.
Okay,
good.
Just,
you know, it's just visuals of what our staff did. What I like about this video is the bank didn't do it, the staff did it. So I think the learning was we just created a platform for people to engage together. But go ahead and run it and I'll talk over. So as I said, we had about 1,000 people working from home and they competed together. They created 42 different teams with about 400 participants. So they got together for the simple challenge, do something good for a day. So they found ways to raise money for people who need help, COVID victims, you know, garbage cleanup, you know, anything that they could think of, but doing remotely. And we were proud that they came out with over 216 different projects that benefited over 400 different entities. So, you know, we didn't really expect our staff to respond so strongly, but I think somebody said earlier, it's not only about winning minds, it's about winning hearts. And this community outreach impact is tremendous, and it makes us really proud as we see our staff really embracing the corporate values that we just relaunched. So that's all. Just enjoy the pictures.
Velikih srčnih sprememb. In vsem, ki se zavedate, da je pomagati izziv, ki se nikdar ne zaključi in ki ves čas potrebuje tebe, mene, nas vse.
Could you put on the screen because it's
Yeah, I think it just finished. So in between, I found a title, How to Manufacture and Embrace. That one I really liked. So it's 2 minutes past, you know, 2:30, which is where we're supposed to end. So thank you very much, Marino, Tomasz, John, and Rasmus for this lively debate. For all of the audience, if you want to continue the debate or have a question for any of us, we're all on LinkedIn. So just reach out, connect. Obviously mention that you heard us at this event so that we will know that you're not some random stalker, and then we can have a conversation on that. So with that, I will leave you with whatever's happening next at this event. So thank you very much.